I think this grieving stuff will constantly keep coming up. It's just part of the process. I've got to really start embracing my past self as part of my acceptance of this chronic illness. And that's something I hadn't really thought about. I thought I just had to accept that I was chronically ill and move forward. But I think I've got to accept and carry with me that successful past me. Is this making sense? Hey folks, it's Finn. Welcome back, lovely people. Thank you so much for choosing to spend time with me today. It is lovely to see you, and if you are watching for the very first time, then a massive welcome. It's lovely to have you here, and thank you so much for choosing one of my videos. My name is Finn. I already said that, I know. But this is Captain Pip Digby. If you've never met him before, just revel in the cuteness. I think he's cute. I hope you do too. Yeah, anyway. So today, I'd like to talk about grief in terms of grieving for your past self, going through grieving when you have a long-term health condition, and how this seems to come up all the time. Like, you go through stages of it and you think you've dealt with it, and then it comes up again. So for the benefit of anybody new, I have myalgic encephalomyelitis, which is ME, ME/CFS. I also have POTS, I have hypothyroidism, I have polymyalgia rheumatica. I'm basically a huge ball of chronic illness, which is energy limiting, reduces my mobility, is a real pain to manage. It has the nickname Fred because it just helps me to have a bit of an amusement factor. So managing Fred on a daily basis is really hard work. It's completely changed my life in every way possible, changed the direction of my life, changed everything that I was doing, changed everything that I thought I was going to be doing. And that's been really hard to manage. Those that follow me, follow my channel and everything I share, know the adjustments I've had to make over the last few years. And this year especially, I've made huge leaps in really accepting how things are and adapting. I've been doing lots of work this year on just starting to not just kind of adapt my life to let me do the things I want to do, but accepting I've got to let go of the things I want to do because I just can't do them, and stop trying to do them and just find what I can now do with my new limitations. You know, if things change and I get better, then great, but I've got to just accept where things are, you know, and that's been fine. But then, and you think, you know, you're at a stage where, you know, I'm in a good place, we're accepting it. And then suddenly something will happen where you just get hit with this kind of wave of grief for the person you were and you might not be again. And this came via a Facebook memory. Good old Facebook for doing this to us. Now, those that follow me will know that 5 years ago now, I can't believe it's 5 years ago, I did a TEDx talk. There's two events that have come up this week on my Facebook page. One is my TEDx talk that I did 5 years ago, and the other is my Open University advert that I did, which I think was 7 years ago. And both of them came up on my Facebook newsfeed. My lovely partner shared both of them, I think. And normally I'd be sharing both of them and, you know, being really proud of both of those things. You know, I did an amazing TEDx talk. It went really well. How amazing to be asked to do a TEDx talk and to do that. What a life accomplishment that is. How amazing to do an Open University advert and be on Channel 4. How incredible is that? But all I felt was this kind of sinking ball of sadness and, yeah, just real nostalgic sadness and just no desire to share, no desire to engage with the lovely post my partner had shared. Just real deep sadness, and so much so that I didn't even talk about it, and I haven't talked about it until right this moment where I'm sharing it with you. Just sadness. And just reflecting on why that is, there's a lot of reasons. I think in my Open Uni advert, there's a piece where I'm walking across the pier. You just see me kind of strutting across the pier. Growing up, I was a very, very unhappy child. I've had lots of mental health problems. I dealt with those by drinking and taking drugs. It was then in sobriety that it became apparent that the reason for my mental health problems was because I was actually transgender, I was male. Then I found out about the Open Uni and life just suddenly opened up and I could make something of my life. I think seeing myself that able-bodied is quite hard. Where now, I can potter around my house and my garden where I feel relatively safe, that I know where I can grab onto things if I get dizzy or wobbly. But outside the house I have to use my wheelchair. Otherwise I get too fatigued, or I might fall, or I might get dizzy. And just, remembering what it was like to just take for granted that I could walk like that. That's hard to see. And watching me on the TEDx stage, just standing, that's hard. Just the ability to just stand and move around a stage, that's hard. So it's the physicality of my past self that's hard to watch. I mean, the weight I've put on, that's hard to see as well. Hypothyroidism, ME, inability to move as much, that's not, that's why I put on weight. I'm also on steroids for the polymyalgia, which I've mentioned before, is driving me up the wall. The steroid moon face and all of that, it's horrific. I'm down to 8 milligrams. I can't wait to be off it, and hopefully this will all change. That's hard. Grieving for my past self, when my body is so out of my own control now that I'm chronically ill, because my body now does do its own thing, and I've gone through gender transition and taken control of my body, where beforehand my gender presentation wasn't my own, whereas now it is. I feel like my wristband is jingling and annoying me. I'm going to take that off. So to be in a body where it's got a mind of its own and its own agenda is really difficult. So looking back to a time where, I know we're never in control of our bodies because they get poorly and whatever, but that illusion where I was in control of my body is gone. But also all of the accomplishments. In my TEDx talk, I was talking about overcoming, well, not necessarily overcoming, because this is the thing I'm all about. Once upon a time, I really believed that I had to be well enough in order to do things. If I got rid of all my mental health problems, I could then go off and do X, Y, Z. And my TEDx talk was all about that you don't have to, be perfectly well and have no anxiety, have no struggles in life in order to go and do what you need to do. You can adapt, and it's not your fault if the world doesn't make accommodations. We're often disabled by the world around us. And if the world would just shift, we could actually be far more successful. It's not our problem, it's the world. And that's basically what my TEDx talk was about, that if we had accommodations made for us, then we could be successful,
Now, when we think about mental health in our society, we think of it as an illness. And so what do we do when somebody has an illness? We look to fix them. We look to make them better. And so when a person presents to their GP with a mental health problem such as depression or anxiety, they're commonly given some time off work and then perhaps supported with medication and counselling to become well enough to then fit back into work. And for many people, this approach works. But for many more, because of the fluctuating nature of mental health, people return to work and sooner or later, the same problems resurface. And for the people that this happens to, they get stuck in frustrating cycles of employment and unemployment. I would like us to imagine a different future for mental health, where instead of trying to fix people to fit their environments, we look at ways to fix an environment to better suit an individual's needs. And I'd like to share my story with you today to illustrate this.
With my own mental health, I didn't wait for my anxiety to go. I learned ways to adapt my life to do the things I wanted to do. So I think for me, just remembering a time where I'd kind of got myself to a place where, despite my anxiety, I was still able to do not all of what I'd wanted to do originally, because my anxiety had given me some limits, but I'd been able to find ways to do some of what I wanted to do despite my anxiety. But now I'd got to a point where I had to stop all of my work. It's not so much I feel like what I said isn't true, but it's like all of that's gone, so I feel like I can't speak to that anymore. I don't know if this is making sense. But yeah, all that stuff that I was really passionate about. I mean, I still am, because it still rings true. Everything I do now, I've adapted what I can in order to still live a life of joy and happiness in the best way I can. So I do still stand for the things that I said in that talk. Some of the ways in which I approached anxiety back then, I wouldn't advocate for now, based on what I know about my chronic illness. I pushed through anxiety in ways I actually don't believe was the right thing to do now what I know now. But still, so I think it is just really hard to see that successful me kind of going, look, what I'm doing despite my anxiety, and yet now I'm not able to do anything of much at all. A deadline is too much for me. I can do very little. I can do a video every few weeks at the moment, and that's about it. And with the Open Uni advert, I think why that's so hard to watch is because there's me being successful despite all this stuff that had held me back in the past. And I completed my degree really well, first degree honours, and now I'm not well enough to go and do anything with it. So both of these things, I was being this really successful person, and now I've been stopped, So it's just really hard, and it's just bringing up loads and loads of grief, So I've been really kind of reflecting on this the last couple of weeks and how it's making me feel, and trying to kind of not push it away as such, but just right size it. If I was 80 years old, I would be looking back at these things with just pride. I think what it is because I'm 50 and it's too early to be this incapacitated. That's why it's so sad. It's like I haven't lived enough yet to be this incapacitated, That's why it's so difficult. But those things that I did, I should still be proud of, This is just a different time in my life. And that's what I have to keep reminding myself of. Just because I'm unwell, I have this chronic illness, what have you, doesn't take away how amazing those things are that I did. It doesn't take away the message that was within those two things. I did those two things to send a message that whatever challenges you have in life, you can still be successful. You can still adapt your life and do what you want to do. You don't have to be told by the people that just because you have anxiety, depression, XYZ, that you don't amount to anything. That was the whole reason I did the TEDx talk, the whole reason I decided to do the Open Uni talk. And those things still stand, and I know I've made a difference to people. And just because I'm not doing those things now doesn't take away the success of then. So I'm kind of doing two things at the moment. I'm letting myself acknowledge the sadness of that those things have gone, but reminding myself that this is just a different time in my life right now. Back then I was being very successful, Finn. I'd gone through a very... Oh, look at him. I'd gone through a very difficult time in my life where I'd been very depressed, drunk, full of gender dysphoria. I'd come out the other side, and I was going out into the world and really exploring who I was and what I was capable of, because I didn't know I was capable of these things. I went out there and I got retrained and I did a degree and I developed my own business and did all these amazing things. That's incredible that I did all of that. And now it's a different time. Now it's a time to slow down and get myself well and just be slower in the world and go inward. And I'm still learning, because I've mentioned this lots of times, that my self-worth has nothing to do with my output. Whether I'm doing a TED talk or lying on the sofa with this one, my self-worth remains the same. It is not tied to my output, But it is really hard when these things come up. When it goes, oh God, I'm not doing that anymore. So what am I worth now? Can I celebrate those things when people will go, oh, well, look at what he's doing now. And in comparison, he's just this bloke in a wheelchair. It's really hard, isn't it? It's really, really hard. But yeah, I wanted to share that this week, in case it helps anyone else who is also going through a similar thing. I think this grieving stuff will likely, sorry, did I make you? Will constantly keep coming up as, it's part of acceptance in long-term conditions like this, I think. It's just part of the process, but it's been a really important one for me. I've got to really start embracing my past self as part of my acceptance of this chronic illness. And that's something I hadn't really thought about. I did it as part of my gender transition. Part of my gender transition that I realised halfway through was accepting my past self. If I was going to be really fully my true self, I had to first acknowledge and accept my past self in order to be fully me. And that was a hard thing to do. But once I did it, I almost became like a full me, realised version of like the male me. And I think I need to do that in order to fully accept where I am now with my chronic illness, if that makes sense. And I hadn't really considered that was going to be part of it, of the acceptance process. I thought I just had to accept that I was chronically ill and move forward. But I think I've got to accept and carry with me that successful past me. Is this making sense? And celebrate and cherish that past successful me, because it's just a different type of success. I was successful in that way then. I'm successful in a different way now. I'm very successful at accepting this new slow life where I might just sit on the sofa and watch a wind spinner for 8 hours. That's just as successful as doing a TED talk and doing a Channel 4 video. Does that make sense? So yeah, if anyone else is going through a similar thing, I hope this might have been helpful. And if you are going through a similar thing and you're having any thoughts on this, please do pop them in the comments below and let me know if this made sense in any way. This week's randomness has been brought to you by Finn and Captain Pip, who has changed positions many times and who sleeps in the weirdest positions. Bless his heart. So yeah, that's this week's thoughts. Accepting oneself involves also celebrating one's past self and not denying that able-bodied self. That able-bodied past self is part of the non-able-bodied new self. Everything's got to be right. You can't cut off your past self. It's all part of it. Just right now, I'm in a different season. Just a quieter, different season. I'm just as valuable and just as successful as I was back then, just in a different way. Yeah. Before I sign off, I want to give a massive shout out and a huge thank you to Rachel for your incredibly kind donation on my Ko-fi page and your lovely message. You are so sweet, and I was incredibly moved to find that. So thank you very much. I haven't left you a message yet. I'm going to leave you a message to say thank you. And anybody who's been asking about my Ko-fi page, memberships, donations, etc., I'll put a link up here to my website which details everything about memberships, donations that you could possibly want to know. But yes, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for watching. I really look forward to your comments on this one. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye.